animating string or rope. It really depends on the scene and what you need. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. And there's no one way that works for every situation. That's the tricky part. So, let's see. Let's say you need to animate some rope. One of the quick ways you can do this, let's see if I can do this off the top of my head here. I'm just going to make a cylinder. Let's make it rope-ish, so make it a little longer. That's a little, yeah, that's fine. So we'll do that, and then I'm just going to add some detail in here, some subdivisions. 20, is that going to be enough? Probably a little bit more. Okay, so something like that. So I've got my rope base in place here for the geometry. Now you could go in and actually make it look a little bit better and get the length you need and whatnot. So let's call this rope geo. Okay, so how do we make it into a rope? Well, one of the easiest ways is to use joints. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to go to rigging, skeleton, create joints. You can also just go to the rigging menu set here and click on the joint tool, which is right here, create joints. And I'm just going to hold down X and this will snap to the grid. And what I'm doing is I want to snap along that center grid here. Now, the amount of joints you put in really is dependent on how detailed you want it to be. And actually, let me double check this. I want this to be exactly, say, 90. The reason for that is when I create the joints now, I can snap it and it'll be right on these lines. You can see right there. This just gives me an extra little bit of control. I probably went a little too detailed with this. Let's just do half here. And I'm just going to delete the rest of this. That way we're not spending so much time constraining things or setting up joints. Okay, so we've got that. Now, we've got this joint chain. So that means I've got this joint chain here that I can actually move and rotate and start posing out. But it's not affecting this main piece here. Okay. To connect them, we just need to go to skin and then bind skin right there. So select the joint, then the geo, I believe. So joint, geo, skin, bind skin. And let's actually double check the settings. I always like to reset them just to make sure. I think that's going to be good enough. Let's bind skin. So now I move the joint and we start getting this. So we're starting to get visual information, deformations. Now you'll notice that it's a little janky looking. If you feel it's too rough, what you can do is just hit the 3 key on the keyboard and it'll smooth things out. We start getting that. I could actually lower my detail. For the amount of joints I put in, I probably just need half as much detail. So let's actually do that super quick. I'm going to select vertices. Let's actually undo before the skin, just to make sure I don't mess anything up. Okay. Not far enough. Okay. Let's move that out of the way. I'm just going to select vertices and let's just get rid of some of the detail here. So you can just put the amount of detail you need for the amount of joints you're going to have. And let's just delete vertices. Oops, no. I want to delete edges. So I'm going to, if you didn't know about this, if you select vertices, you can then go to, if you hold down Control, convert it to edges. And that'll convert the selection to edges. Now in this case, didn't do exactly what I wanted, but that's fine. I can just do that. There we go. Delete edges. There we go. Now I've toned down that amount of detail. Let's skin that again. Find skin. So there we go. And once again, I can hit 3 on the keyboard, and now you can see how it smooths it a little bit better. Now, you could also do some skin painting or weight painting on this to make sure that it works properly and doesn't get that pinchiness in there. This is where rigging gets a little bit of a pain. So we can start to do this. So, yay, we got a rope-ish thing. But is it great? Yes and no. It's kind of a pain to work with because we can't control one end. We can only control the start right here. So if I rotate this control, yay, that works. If I want to control this one, I just get this, which is okay. But what if I want a character pulling on a rope? It's tied somewhere and they're pulling it, and we want that connection from one end to the other. Not great. This is great for maybe more of a whip type action. So you want to animate a whip. This could work really well. It could work for, what other situations would this work for? If you just had one end of the rope tied to something else and it's dragging along, so kind of like a tail. So if you want this end to be kind of dragging along and you just animate the rest as if it's a tail dragging on the ground, that could work really nicely. So this is one way. Something like that. Anything cloth related, rope hanging from a hook. Yeah, exactly. Also, animals and hello. So this is one way of doing it. Very basic, very simple. It's not going to be the prettiest thing, but it works. So how can we make a rope that has to hang from 2 points? So maybe we want it to kind of think of like Aladdin. You've got the clotheslines hanging from the windows and you want your character to jump onto the clothesline and do some cool move on a clothesline. Both points are locked, but we need to animate the middle part. Well, to do that, there's a bunch of different ways we can do it. One of the simpler ones would be to use a curve. So for this, I'm going to create a NURB circle. Let's rotate this 90 degrees. You can also do this with polygons, but in this case, NURBS is going to be a little bit simpler and give us a little bit more control over changing the amount of detail. So I'm going to create this, and then let's actually leave it at the center of the world here. Now I'm going to create a curve. I'm going to go to Create, Curves, and I'm going to use a CV curve tool, so a Control Vertex tool. This is an EP curve tool, edit points. They end up making a curve. It's just the way they create the curve is a little different. So I'm going to use a CV tool, and let's go to the top view, and I'm going to start the curve. This is very important. Start the curve where the circle is. I'm going to hold down X and click right there. Now, I could make a curve if I wanted to. So let's actually do that. Make a curve in here, just so we can see that it does something. And then I'm going to go into my modeling menu set. And what I want to do is I want to create an extrude. So I'm going to select the curve, then or sorry, select the circle, then the curve. Surfaces, let's do an extrude. And reset the settings. I think that's all good. Extrude. There we go. And I actually went into negative space. So what I mean by negative space is you'll notice that the curve is black. This is because I created this going backwards. I should have gone forwards in positive Z. Is that a big thing? Not really. But let's actually do this. So we can see that that worked. Let's actually make it properly this time. So create a curve. I don't do this very often, I will say that. I don't usually use NURBS. I use polygons most of the time. In this case, the NURBS is just going to give me a little bit more control over certain things. So I'm just going to create a straight line this time. Just like that. Okay. So once again, curve, or circle, curve, extrude. There we go. Now it's the right direction. Great. So what does this give us? Well, it gives us geometry for one. But the other thing is that when you do an extrude like this, that curve is still editable. And because of the construction history, so construction and history in Maya is all the information that gets piled up in here. So there's our extrude right here. I can actually use this to my advantage. So if I do any edits to this curve, you'll see that the extrusion updates as well. So I can lay this out, get that length that I want, and then animate these points to animate the curve. And of course it's going backwards. Interesting. I don't know why it's doing this. This is very strange. Yeah. Oh, I know why. Yeah. These 2 points here have to be in line with each other. You'll notice that I forgot this about NURBS. This is how often I use NURBS. The first and second point have to be in line with each other. This is why they have a different symbol. This is the U right there. This determines the direction of the curve. If I start adjusting this, you'll notice that the curve just flips out. So I'll just keep those kind of together. Everything else will work fine. So we get something like this. And now I can just animate the rope by animating these points here. And yes, this is Maya. So if I wanted kind of just a rope that's hanging, there we go. Now the problem here is that these control points right here, they are a pain to animate. If ever you've had to animate control points or vertices, you know exactly what I mean. They are not fun to deal with, and more often than not, it's just going to lead to nightmarish situations where you're trying to key things and you're not seeing your keys correctly. It's just a pain. So instead, what you can do is create clusters. So a cluster is a type of deformer that allows you to animate vertices or faces or edges or control points like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my control vertex here, go to deform, and I'm just going to create a cluster. Boop, like that. Now let's keep going. So control vertex, oops, make sure let's turn off the extruded surface here just so we can see the curve. Control vertex, make a cluster. I'm just hitting G to repeat the last command. Cluster, cluster, like so. Now, what this means is that I could actually turn off the curve. I don't need to see it anymore. And in my viewport, I can just select the clusters, and you'll notice that, hey, look, they've got translates and rotates and all of this cool stuff. And I can just animate that. So I can start to animate my rope hanging from one point to another, or if I have a character stepping along the rope, I could make it dip where they're walking. Kind of push that shape there a little bit more, make it a little tighter. It's stretched where they're kind of walking along the rope, and then move that along like so. So you could animate a character doing a walk across a tightrope and actually animate the rope slightly. Or if they're hanging onto a rope or something like that, or a band that's strapped in 2 spots. This would be one way to do it. I could, I could even animate the very end of it if I wanted to. So let's reset these clusters. Again, clusters are nice because I can, reset, and they go right back into their position. So clusters, very, very useful tool. So let's make sure I actually set a cluster on the very end of the curve as well. Hide that for now. Control vertex, and just add one more cluster. Oop. Now you could also do the beginning here, but that's going to be, when you have extrusions, it's kind of harder to animate that first section because you have to be careful where the circle is as well. So I can just take this cluster now and adjust the end of the rope too. So like this, make it longer, shorter, adjust where it's going to connect to. If I want cabling or wires, so maybe you've got like a mech and you want like a cable attaching the neck to the head, you could do something like that. Constrain the cluster here to the head, so you've got one constrained here, one constrained there, and as it moves it's going to pull and stretch that wire, and you can animate it to get that cable kind of moving, or if you've got pipes leading to like an air tank or something. There's a lot of cool ways you can do that with a curve and clusters. And if I want to make this surface a little cleaner, just select it, and you'll notice that, oh, it's just not that high quality. Not great. I can just go to surfaces and then hit rebuild. And let's reset this. I'm just going to increase the amount of detail it has. So right now it has, let's see how many. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, it's probably like 10 or 12 different spans. So let's increase this. So I'm going to rebuild it uniformly so it keeps the detail nice and uniform across the entire surface. And I don't need to really worry about too much else. So let's set the number of spans. Now I believe U is going to be across. We'll test this out. Let's put that to 12 and hit apply. Nope, wrong way. So let's keep that maybe at 6, and let's do 24 here. Apply that. Nice and smooth. It's basically added more detail along the length. And because there's construction history, it still works. So you can start getting a lot of really nice detailed objects in here very quickly. Now another way, because we have construction history, we might actually be able to do that right here in the extrusion. Maybe not. No, we would have had to add more points to the curve for that to work. So yeah, just take our curve here, update the spans. There we go. Now we've got this really nice smooth curve with very little work. Yeah. So yeah, this works really well, and this is kind of my preferred way to do it. Now, like I said, I don't usually use NURBS. The main reason being a lot of the stuff that I work on tends to be polygon modeling, polygon projects, polygon-based projects. So instead, we can do that with polygons as well. So I could take a polygon disk, for example. Let's take that, and I'm going to change this. This would not be a great thing to extrude right here. I'm going to change this to a caps disk. Let's increase the sides, maybe 12. Yeah, 12 is good. And then we'll take the subdivisions down to 1, or sorry, 0. That way it's just this kind of pie-shaped object. Like so. And NS Films, oh, thank you so much for the gift. And Peter, hey, congrats. Welcome to the subs. Hey, thank you so much, NS Films. Oh man, thank you. Gotta do the dance. So with polygons, the same thing works. So if I create a curve, so let's do a CV curve tool. Well, actually, I'll show you the EP curve tool. Show you the difference. So a CV curve tool is you're creating the control vertices, those points that we created the clusters on. If I click, you can see there's the first one. There's the U, the directional control vertex. And then we start to go into our control points. Every individual control point that we're going to be using to animate later on. If I go to control vertex, you can see that's exactly where we created them. An EP curve tool, so an edit point curve tool. I create one point. The next point, you'll notice it's just an X. Then a third, fourth. You can see it's creating them, but they're not CVs. They're just points on the line itself. And then if we look at our control vertex, you can see how they're not positioned on the line anymore. So how is that important? It's just really whatever you prefer. A CV curve tool, if I start creating curves, you'll notice how it's already showing me that differentiation from the curve to where I'm creating the points. EP curve tool doesn't do that. That's kind of it, at least to me, for the amount I use it. There are moments where you're going to need one versus the other, but as an animator, very rarely. So I'm going to create my first point right there, and then let's just go straight up from here. And actually, we can actually start curving this. So let's actually make this a little bit bigger because that base is huge. Okay. So we'll bring that out here. Just gonna extend these. So let's say I want to create, I don't know, this weird question mark-esque symbol here. Something like that. Maybe it's a hook. I can create the curve, and then I'll take my object. So just take this, and let's actually just make a circle. There we go, that's better. I just want this circle. I could do it with the caps, but I prefer doing it this way, because I just have to select the one face, select the curve, and then extrude it. And you'll get this, which doesn't look great, does it? That didn't go as well as I'd hoped. The reason it's doing that is it doesn't have enough visual information to work correctly. So if I up my divisions here, you'll notice that it sticks closer and closer to the curve. There we go. I believe I can actually set this to any number I want. Yeah. So if it goes up to 25 and oh, that's not enough, you can still bump it up to whatever you need. So maybe something, maybe 50 is good enough. There we go. And the cool thing with this is you get a lot of different options here. So this is why I prefer the polygon version, just for myself. It still has the construction history, which means I can still move this around and animate all of that. Great. Perfect. Haha. So I would make clusters on all of these. I can still animate them exactly how I want. Create that rope effect. But on top of this, let's actually undo this, and I'm going to get rid of the circle. So we've done a circle before. But what if we do a different shape. Let's do a cube. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the faces and delete everything except for the top face right there. So we've got that. Let's snap it down to the start here. Oop, right there. So face, select the curve, extrude. And once again, let's add maybe 50 divisions. Okay, great. That's kind of cool. This is something you can't get with NURBS, is you can actually just use whatever shape. You want a triangle, you can use a triangle. You want a square, an octagon, whatever, you can do it. But there's some extra features that I really like about this. Namely, if you go into the actual channel box here, you can adjust the paper. Maybe you want it to thin out by the end. So now you can really start getting that hook shape, maybe go to a point. Maybe you want it to get thicker. And you can adjust the twist, which creates this really cool dynamic object. Maybe, yeah, we'll do that for now. Cool dynamic object that still has construction history. So I can take my control vertices and still move these, and we still get that nice dynamic shape. Just like that. So it's a really powerful tool to create these complex forms, whether you're using it for modeling or like making tubes or something like that. You can create these complex forms that is just for the modeling process, or you could even use these to animate by using clusters and then animate this as like some sort of weird alien, I don't know, grabby thing, feeler, maybe antennas or something on a creature. You have basically all sorts of things you can do with this. So in terms of like going back to the original question, animating rope, this as well as the joints would be my two kind of go-tos for that kind of animation. It really depends on the purpose. Now these are for simple things. If you're doing much more complex ropes, for example, a character that has to take a rope and then he has to like put it around his arm or something like that, in that case, I would end up either having to make a much more complex rig, or more often than not, what I'll do is I'll just draw it in. So I'll use something like the grease pencil tool and just draw in the rope where I need it to be. So the grease pencil tool allows you to draw in the viewport. Now, I actually don't use the Maya's grease pencil tool that often. I will be blunt and just say that it is not very good. It's okay for certain things, but when you have to make more complex animations with it or use it for anything that just requires a little bit more precision, it's just not really that good. So instead, what I like to use is the blue pencil plugin, which I don't have installed here for some reason. Let me actually double check that it's maybe just not active here. The blue pencil, it is a paid plugin. I forget the cost of it. Let's see. We're going to load this up here. Let me copy that into the plugins folder. So to install my plugins in my, oftentimes you just need to copy the plugin into the correct folder. I think I might have updated that folder, which is why it's not reading it. Let me, where are you? There you go. So copy that in. 2020. And plugins. There we go. So did that load for me? Blue pencil. No, of course. Okay, I'll have to try and figure out how to install that. Anyway, I'll just go to the website for everyone. Might be because I've got Maya open. Blue pencil, Maya plugin. So this is it. And it's just a really powerful drawing tool. It's got layers, it's got all sorts of really nice features. I wonder if mine is just old actually. That could also be. Oh, blue pencil too. There you go. That's why. So yeah. It's $65. So it's not cheap. For the amount that I use these tools, it's actually really nice. I use these quite often. So it really depends on how much you use a grease pencil tool. If you very rarely use a grease pencil tool or you find no use for it to begin with, this tool is probably not going to change your mind. It's not going to be like, oh, suddenly I must have this. If you do like grease pencils, then this is worth it for Maya. Blender has amazing grease pencil tools already. And what do animators use the pencils for? A lot of things. So let me actually, I want to get this installed, see if it actually works. Documentation. Let's see. So, users, documents. Okay, yeah, that's where I was going. So, users, documents, Maya, version 2020, and then plugins. Okay. So, from there, open up the plugin manager and browse. So we'll see if this works this time. Windows, settings, preferences, plugin manager. Browse for it. And let's see if we can find it here. There we go. Aha! And auto load it. There we go. So, blue pencil. So, with the blue pencil, and actually, you have a license for it, so browse for that as well. And there's my licenses. Blue pencil. Okay. So, with blue pencil, you can see, oh, look at those beautiful lines. They're so nice compared to the Maya grease pencil.